All right, this is my 1994 Subaru WRX. I picked it up from Japanese Classics back in February, before all the coronavirus stuff started. I've wanted to do this video for a while, but either the weather hasn't cooperated, or I haven't had time, or whatever the reason it may be. But I wanted to get a video and just show an overall condition of the vehicle as I purchased it, and before I changed anything on it. So it's not exactly the same as when I got it. Largely it is. There are a couple of small differences, but nothing that's too big. You can see the Japanese license plate that I added in the front there. But it's a good, solid car. There's no rust. Runs great. Does have higher mileage for a Subaru, especially some of the other ones that they had sold. But the condition is great, and it drives fine. So the mileage hasn't been a worry at all. Whoever owned this in Japan definitely took care of it. The timing belt maintenance sticker is in there. There's no oil leaks. Everything just works as it should. The paint is definitely original, but in good condition. There are some marks and dings and dents, nothing major. I would say that the largest defect, if you really want to call it that, at some point it looks like there was some aero installed here. You can see a hole in the bumper there. There's one on the other side, and then some marks in the clear coat, maybe from adhesive. I've tried to clean it off, but it appears to be permanent. The other indicator of something on the car is this little piece right here. There's only one on this side though. There's not one on the other. The wheels were in great shape. Part of my learning experience with right-hand drive was this minor curb rash right here, which could come out with a little bit of work, but all the other wheels are in great shape. So I guess that's just part of learning to drive right-hand drive. It does have the Subaru rain guards, so they are mounted to the body because there's no frames on the doors. So when the window is up, of course it'll clear that with no issue. They're not as effective as doors with the frames where they're mounted right above it, but they're still nice to have, and they're in good condition too. No cracks or chips or anything. The color on them has faded a little bit, I think, over the years, but good solid piece there. So things that I noticed that were different about this particular vehicle when I got it compared to other 94s. The spoiler and deck lid are from a later year, maybe model. I'm not exactly sure. Being more of a Honda guy, I could probably tell you exactly what it was, but this definitely came from an STI. You can see the outline of the STI sticker from where they removed it. And then on the 94 WRXs, the script is over here in this area. You can also see too that there's a Syms Racing Team sticker on the side there. This vehicle does have a Syms Racing header, equal length. And that header also has a catless up pipe as a single piece to it, so there's no pre-cat turbo, which is excellent. The last thing you want is something like that coming apart and destroying your turbo. So I'll do I guess I've already gotten into it, but I'll do a little overview of the outside, just kind of point out some things that I find that are interesting. I'll show the engine bay a little bit, then the inside, and then in a separate video that will be posted right after this, I'll do a little POV test drive. I actually am taking this car back to Japanese Classics in about 4 days. I'm going to be trading it for a Toyota Celsior 1994. Like the WRX, it's a good car, a lot of fun. I don't have any problems with it, but with my growing family, I want to be able to enjoy my right-hand drive vehicle with them, and space is just a little cramped in the WRX. So on the hood, silence my phone there. On the hood, it does have the hood scoop for the intercooler, and it also has this heat extractor here for the turbocharger. When we open up the hood, you'll see there's a place here where the hot air coming off the turbo would be directed towards that extractor. These vents are real vents. I don't know if you can see it on the camera preview there. I've removed the cover that's underneath this one. I assume to act as a collection to keep water from dripping directly on to components underneath it. This side still has it intact. But I removed the factory heat shields from the turbocharger and put a PTP Turbo Blanket on there. And there was still a lot of heat collecting in this area, so I've removed this, and I only drove this a couple of minutes to this location from my house, and it was cold, but I can still feel heat coming out of here, whereas the rest of the area, you know, of course I can still feel a little bit of heat, but quite a bit coming from there, so it is working. The fog lights, I put in yellow bulbs there for the JDM look. Surprisingly, these headlights, being from the early 90s, I can see pretty well at night. Of course, being right-hand drive, they are projected the opposite direction as opposed to a left-hand drive vehicle, but they do pretty well. I'd even go as far to say as I can see better at night with this car than I can with my 2001 Honda Accord, so I was really surprised at that. And everything works on this car. Say the only thing that needs a little help is the sunroof. When I first got it, they'd noted that it didn't work, but when I was driving one day, I just decided to give it a shot. I was doing about 60 miles an hour, hit the button, and it opened right up. So what I've discovered, which I don't know why, but it'll only open at high speeds by itself, or at lower speeds or at a stop, but it just needs a little help pushing up, and from then it works perfectly. From what I understand, that's a normal thing with the GC8 chassis. This car also, the side skirts and the rear bumper lips are painted on this one, color matched the vehicle. On all the other ones that I've seen, for the most part, they've all been just a bare black plastic, kind of like the door handles here, same type of just rough material. So I definitely like the look with the painted there. I wish the door handles were painted, and you know, if I were keeping this long term, that would be something that I would definitely do. Just cleans the look up. This piece here, I believe, is aftermarket. Oh, it says Kenwood on it. I've never noticed that. This vehicle does have an aftermarket head unit in it now. I assume it had maybe another piece or some gauges above that, but it had quite a bit of sound deadening behind the rear seats, which I removed. There's no subwoofers or any reasoning for that. Didn't really change much as noise from the exhaust, but yeah, a lot of ground wires and wiring around to the back. Speaking of which, along the related line there, the STIs and I think the WRX Type RAs have the intercooler sprayers. This WRX on the factory did not come with it, but one of the owners in Japan retrofitted an STI intercooler spray to this car. So it's got the button It's got the correct nozzle, all of the tubing is run to the trunk, but there's no pump or reservoir anymore. So that's something that I assume could be easily added to this vehicle. Just a few pieces, possibly a relay needed. I'm not sure if I'd trust the wiring on this car. Some of the switches and other pieces that I've removed from this vehicle that weren't connected to anything, the wiring wasn't that great. It didn't look like they damaged anything that was OEM, but not quite a rat's nest. Just wasn't the cleanest work for my taste. It did come with factory exhaust when I bought it, aside from the Syms racing header. I eventually settled on the HKS high power exhaust. Just had a good tone from the videos that I could see, and the bang for the buck was good, and I wanted a little bit more growl. Didn't necessarily add much power, but you know, it looks nice, it sounds nice. Hopefully not too loud for my neighbors. Most people don't care what they think I do. The American license plates, as you can see, I had to drill 2 new holes. The Japanese license plates are just a little bit different size than the US plates, but 2 minutes worth of work, and it fits just fine. The rear wiper is a nice touch too. A lot of cars that I've had that have been US specs, specifically Preludes, would have loved to have had a rear wiper. It actually has come in handy quite a few times. This car also has the factory bronze glass. I don't know if this is standard on all the Subarus, but on Hondas it seems to be a particularly rare option. So basically the glass itself, if you're not familiar with it, is tinted, not with an actual tint, but just the glass itself. This back window is a bad example because it also has tint on it, but if you can see looking through there, it is just a shade darker. The front glass is the only exception. It is not tinted. This is something I did as well. The original antenna, all the rubber around it was cracking and splitting, and I was concerned about water getting in. So this is a Grimspeed antenna delete plate. Literally these two came off, the antenna slid out after unplugging it, and then it bolted right in. So clean that up, and I don't listen to the radio anyways. This car doesn't have a US head unit anyways, so very limited on the frequencies. That's still the original Japanese classic stock number. We'll look under the hood here. So as you can see, the panel there underneath the hood has seen better days, but what car this age hasn't? And then you can see where I've removed the panel underneath it for the water collection, or at least that's what I assume it's for. This car also has front and rear upper strut tower bars. They look to be maybe a factory STI piece. I've seen these on a lot of cars, especially those from Japanese classics, but I don't know for sure what they are. It also has a Cusco lower chassis brace, so right underneath the engine at the back there. The car handles pretty good. The struts and springs are stock, so still handles good even though that stuff is stock. I put a K&N washable air filter in here. I didn't want to put an intake on it just because it's not something you do on a Subaru if you don't have a tune. Piece here, something that was already on there. You can also, it's hard to see, I don't know if it's coming up on the video or not, but the AC lines, a little easier to see down in there, are wrapped in some type of material, I assume to protect them from extra heat from the aftermarket header, but the air conditioning on this car works amazingly well. Something that is interesting about this car that I'd never seen until I looked at pictures of them, but the intercooler on these early vehicles is angled to the side there. Later on, I think in 95 or 96, I started doing the regular non-angled intercoolers. You see the turbo blanket down there. Actually helped with spool time almost immediately from installation, so I was pretty happy with that purchase. Wasn't very expensive. I want to say I paid about $30 shipped for the turbo blanket, so money well spent there. This is the point where the original heat shield coming off the turbo would sit here and meet up with that on the hood, so hot air would release through the hood instead of collecting in the engine bay. There's the timing belt sticker. Replaced it 165,000 kilometers. Right now it's just a few kilometers over 200,000. And then I did replace the battery with a Marathon Max. This is a AGM battery. Definitely overkill for this car, but it's got a 4-year warranty, and honestly, the last thing I ever want to do is be stuck somewhere because of a battery. Such a simple thing. Here's some of the wiring left behind from the original or previous owner, and I don't know exactly how many owners this vehicle had, but quite a few ground wires. I've removed a few of them. I never got around to messing with these ones. And then I did add a Defi boost gauge. There's the sensor there. I ran the stock wiring along here. This T was already here, so I assume at some point it had a gauge in Japan in there. Evidence of that is here on the dash. It's hard to see, but there's a little mark, probably from some sticky material. But overall, very clean engine. There's no leaks, no running issues. Starts up just right every time. The vehicle sat for a couple weeks. I just started it this weekend, and it fired without hesitation, and we went on a little drive. Open the trunk and the fuel door. Something I noticed too, this fuel door is it's plastic, not metal. And most cars that I've owned in the past have had some type of nylon string or something connecting the fuel cap to the vehicle, but this doesn't. But it has this nice little area here for you to set the cap on, so as long as the wind isn't blowing the door shut, it sets right there. And the fuel nozzles in Japan are much larger than US cars, so you always have to hold the nozzle while you're pumping fuel, unless you want it falling out and spraying fuel everywhere, which I know a lot of people don't do that. OCD, I always put that down. Same with my Hondas. I'm weird like that. Here's the trunk. Nothing too exciting going on here. Here's the rear strut tower brace, and you can see the hose and some of the wiring for the intercooler spray. From Japanese Classics, it actually did not have a jack, so I put a OEM Subaru jack in there. And then I replaced the original spare tire with a same size Continental, just with the age of it. I didn't want to be stuck somewhere. I also added the Subaru tool kit. This sits right in place, but every time I get in, it seems to be out, so I kind of just set it in there. And this isn't connected to anything, so it just kind of lays in there, and same thing, it shifts around, especially if you have something in the trunk. But for the size of this vehicle, the trunk is pretty good. Obviously cars from the early and mid 90s weren't built with the same crash standards as today's cars are, so there's a little more room in those places. So the inside is one of the key points that sold me on this car. I love these seats, the material at least. I love how they fit too. I'm a little bit bigger guy, especially around the midsection, working on that, but these seats are just great. They scream 90s. There's a little bit of wear here, but most of the time these seats have a lot of wear on the bolsters. The seat bolts down here and in the back were loose when I got it, so I assumed that this seat had been removed at some point in its life for racing, because otherwise it would, or for a racing seat, not necessarily racing, but this seat probably would have been in a lot worse condition. The passenger seat is great too, shows minimal signs of wear, and like most cars from Japan, the car just overall inside is near immaculate, especially for the age. If you go to find a US vehicle around the same year, you're going to find a lot of junk, which I'm sure you would in Japan as well. I'm not saying they're all perfect, but Japanese seem to be pretty particular about the care of their vehicles. The only real spot of wear that pops out in my mind is right here on the door. The fabric seems to pop out. I've used a trim tool and tucked it back in there, but for a proper fix, I think the door would need to be disassembled and then some adhesive applied underneath there. But that's a minor complaint. Little door pocket here. On the dash, there's a little storage pocket here. I'm guessing there was a toll card reader or some type of device in here. There's a hole drilled in the bottom. It does have the original mats, which are a lot thicker than today's mats. Again, they were built with quality. And again, you know, I love the design on them. It's similar to the seats as far as the colors. So there's just little bits of blue and pink and maybe a little bit of purple in there. So it just adds some fun to it that we really don't see as much in cars today. We'll go around to the other side before we hop in the driver's seat and look at some things. The doors are amazingly light. Probably not a lot of crash protection in the side there, nor sound deadening. A little clip there. Never noticed that. I've only ridden in this car one time, so put that back. But yeah, they have a very light feel to them. Sometimes I don't even get the door shut all the way because I just give them a little push. But again, real clean. This is something that's interesting. Under the passenger seat is a little drawer, but I find that you have to lift up on the handle that slides the seat forward and backwards. But I keep all of my registration and all of the copies of import documentation in there. I added a little flashlight flare down here. The car didn't come with one originally. Thought that was a fun little thing to have. Glove box is standard size. I've got some junk in there. Not a whole lot to say about the back seat. It's just a seat. No door pockets in the back. No pockets in the back of the seats. It does have a little ashtray here, but it's never been used. It catches on the carpet. It's right up on it there. And the rear carpet piece is two pieces. It snaps together right here with two little snaps. It's interesting that they bothered with the additional fabric for the hump there. But, let's get in and check out the interior. So things that I've changed since I got the vehicle. The original shift knob, or the one that came on it, I don't believe it was original. It was identical to this one. It was well worn, and actually I have it here in the glove box, but it's got something on it. I don't know what it is, but it's very sticky and tacky. Not worn down too much, actually. I remember it being a lot worse, but I like everything to be in good condition on my vehicles, so I found a new in bag OEM replacement for next to nothing, so I picked it up. I like the accordion shift boot. That screams 90s as well. This is the head unit that came in the car. It's a I don't know how to pronounce that. Carazia. There's my Kentucky accent coming out, even though I'm from Oklahoma. But it's by Pioneer. I've used it to play a couple of CDs, and it sounds alright. It's not great. I don't know what kind of speakers are in the doors, but they play music, so that's good enough. But most of the time I just listen to the car. The cars originally would have had there's a cigarette outlet here and a little ashtray or pocket here. Can't remember which side they're on, but that's what would originally been here. My long-term plan was to just put a little block-off plate there to cover that up. It does have automatic climate control, so you can set it to auto and it will keep it at the temperature that you set it, and it actually will control the AC as long as the button is depressed. Most of the time I would say that I enjoy automatic climate control systems. I think they're very interesting. I do not like this one. Even when you have it on manual fan speed settings, it is either ice cold or roasting hot. There's no in between. So obviously these temperatures are in Celsius. I don't know what the conversion is, but say you have the temperature set here and it's blowing ice cold on you, and you want to warm it up just a little bit, and so you click it up just once, it will instantly go full heat and start to blast you. So I don't know if that's something that's broken, maybe a sensor or something is dirty or defective, but at any rate, I do not like the auto climate control system, so I usually just leave it all the way on cold, and as long as it's not raining, I'll have that closed so it's not blowing air on me. Originally, alright, so the battery on the GoPro camera died, so that's why there's a cut in the video. But at any rate, I keep the climate control there. The car originally, if you can see it, had some switches, aftermarket switches that were here. One had a label for high-low, and the other one just had a little LED in the back of it. And I have no idea what they went to or what they did, so I removed them because they did nothing when I flipped them around. This is the intercooler water spray button, which without the reservoir and pump in the back is non-functional, but it's nice to have that there. You've got your fog light switch and power folding mirrors, which on this vehicle actually do work. From what I understand, it's pretty common for these things to be non-functional, but these ones work just fine. Let's see. So the one thing that took a while to get used to, aside from driving on the other side of the vehicle and shifting with my left hand, was using my turn signal with my right hand, because this is your free hand while you're driving. So that's what you're going to use to use your turn signal or pull your brights, so your wipers on the other side. That wasn't too hard to get used to. For the most part, I think I've gotten used to it. except now when I drive a left-hand drive vehicle, I'm constantly hitting the wipers. I've wanted a right-hand drive car for probably over a decade now, so I have gotten used to it, I guess, fairly quickly, because this is something I've wanted for such a long time. So now when I go back to the other side of the vehicle, my brain is falling back to what I prefer, I guess you could say. I did add, and I don't know if you can see it in the low light here, but I added a carbon fiber surround from an STI cluster. I don't know exactly which version STI, I want to say version 5, but I did change that from just the normal plain overlay. And then this is the boost gauge that I added, which when I wired it up, I measured the source incorrectly, and so when you power it on, you have to turn on the parking lamps. Something I had planned on fixing, but I'll either let Japanese Classics do it or the next owner. And this gauge was originally white LED backlit, but I disassembled it and used green film, 3 layers, to tint it green, so that way they would match the gauge backlight, the factory gauge backlight. That's also green. Map lights up here, sunroof controls, sunroof. This sun visor works just fine. It's nice and tight. And something I've noticed too, it has an indentation here for, I guess, what would be a mirror, but this car does not have them. The driver's side doesn't have one either. It has the same indentation. This visor is a little floppy. The only things that really came on the car from Japan were this little clamp here and this little paper clip right here. Writing there, which I did Google Translate on it one time, but this talks about the catalytic converter overheating, just standard stuff. Speaking of the paper clip, I had been very interested to find something in the car that had made its way from Japan, perhaps some coins or a gum wrapper. You know, not anything of great interest, but I'd hoped to find something like that. But all throughout the car, I did not find a single thing. So either it was empty when it came over, or Japanese Classics did a great job of detailing the vehicle, which the vehicle, aside from just basic washing and the occasional vacuuming, is exactly how it came as far as cleanliness from Japanese Classics. So I have not had to do any in-depth cleaning to this vehicle, so it is just very clean all the way around. Down here on the center console, there's a couple of little pockets here for coins, blank there. My garage door opener fits perfectly in this little compartment there. Console is pretty standard. There's a little clip there for business cards, I assume. Some Velcro and a little pad there. More coin pockets. Dead GoPro battery. But not a whole lot going on there. Nardi steering wheel. And this leather, while original and slightly worn, has a nice patina. It still feels good in the hands. Stitching is worn a little bit there and there, which those are, you know, when I drive, I hold right there. But otherwise is in good condition. I'd considered having the wheel recovered, but I wanted to keep as much original as I could that was still in good usable condition, aside from that shift knob that drove me nuts every time I drove it. But steering wheel feels great. It's got a good shape to it. It's not too thick. There's no buttons, there's no airbag, obviously just the horn. So there's not really a whole lot to it. It's just very basic. I like it. Original key. I got the original key and a valet key with it, and you can tell it's original because it has the key code stamped into the metal. I don't know if that will come up on the camera or not, but I was able to get some duplicates made through the Subaru dealer, which was pretty cool. Before we take off, I'll show the exhaust a little bit. Something I found out on the trip home after I purchased this car was that you do not have to depress the clutch to start the vehicle. So as long as the vehicle is not in gear, you can put the key in, start it right up. It's got a good sound to it. Start the car, and when you turn on the headlamps, the boost gauge dims itself, which that's another thing. When I just put it in and it was not tinted, it was extremely bright. Even at night when the illumination had dimmed it, it just blinded me. So this vehicle has got just over 200,000 miles on it, or 200,000 kilometers, and it drives great. So we'll do a little POV drive. I'll do it with the windows down. I don't know how the audio is going to sound on this camera. I've never used it before, but I'll do some with windows down and then some with windows up, and we'll turn the AC on. In this vehicle, in Japan, they use a higher octane fuel than what we can get over here. So I run 93 octane, which is the highest I can get a hold of, and then about every other tank I use VP Fuel's octane booster. I don't remember exactly which one it is, but it adds about 7 points, and the vehicle seems to run a lot smoother with that stuff in the tank. So it's a little expensive. I want to say it's about $20 a can, but it's well worth how the vehicle drives to put that in the tank. Oh, it does have power locks. You just flip that forward and they're all locked. Does have auto up and down for the driver's window only. All the windows work just fine. The one on the passenger side and then the one on the driver's rear are a little slow, but they do still function. what I assume is original suspension. The car rides pretty good. It's not too stiff, doesn't make a whole lot of noise. Just like everything else in the car, it just seems to work properly. Nice fun road. So as far as shifting goes, I would say the hardest thing for me to get a hold of was second to third when driving spiritedly, which is probably about half of my driving. A little better at it, but going straight back is a lot easier. Didn't find anything in the vehicle from Japan as far as little trinkets go. One Easter egg I did find was that this vehicle had the ECU swapped out at some point. So it is running an SC ECU, which from what I could find on the internet is that it is an STI ECU out of a wagon. So basically what this means is the tune is a little bit different than what this car would have run from the factory, even though the engines are extremely similar. But the SA, SB, and SC ECUs are all factory EEPROM chipped. So you can remove the little chip and put a new one in there and tune it to your liking. Later on, after the early WRX and STI vehicles, STI started manufacturing their own ECUs, so they didn't have that EEPROM chip in there, but from what I can find, that's not exactly something that's common to run across, so it was a nice find. It does not have the chip in it anymore. The J1 connector has been reconnected, so it's still running. I think it's equivalent to a Z4 ECU, not the BMW, Z4 Subaru tune, which puts it right around 12 pounds of boost. My original plan, if I were to keep the vehicle, would to use a Rob tune. Sounds a little redundant, but he's created an off-the-shelf type of tune, so that when used with these Japanese vehicles or engines swapped into US cars, they're a little more friendly for US fuels and make them a little peppier. Even with the air conditioning on, this vehicle pulls very well. Apologize in advance for any of the video quality. I have zero skills of that nature, and the sun is at a odd position. It's late in the evening, and whoops, missed my turn. It's all right. Found in Kentucky is that there's no shortage of pretty roads. There's always somewhere to go. Quick, because that road is fun and goes back to my house. Bad thing, I won't say it's a bad thing about this road, is that it's tight. There's no markings, which doesn't bother me, but a lot of times bicyclists will come down this road, and while I'm all about sharing the road, they tend to clog it up. So, but there's not usually a lot of traffic on this road, so I see why they would choose it. drive this road a lot in my EP3 Civic Si, and while it didn't exactly have a lot of power, it's a lot of fun. That handled decently well, but being on the other side of the car I like a lot better because I can see the edge of the road, and if there's ever oncoming traffic, especially horse trailers and big trucks through here, I can get over and give them a little more room, give me some peace of mind. I've ever gotten. That's one thing I've found with a right-hand drive car, is that it doesn't matter where you are, someone is going to look or come up and say hi or ask a question, and it brings out people that aren't even necessarily car people. You know, they ask if the cars come from Britain. Some know where it's from, but it's a lot of fun to get to talk to people about the car, because it's for most people it's something they've never seen before, even though the Impreza was sold here. So I'm not exactly a people person. I tend to keep to myself, so that's just something that I've, oddly enough, learned to live with, and it's not too bad. Got a lot of thumbs up too. Gotta say, I'm gonna miss this car. I've had a lot of cars. I think this is either 19 or 20. So I'll be 34 this year, so that's a lot of cars. But it's my first right-hand drive car. It's my second Subaru. I had an 07 STI prior to this. There were several cars before, but that was the other Subaru I had, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And when I was looking for a car, I knew I wanted something turbocharged. I wanted something right-hand drive and manual. I also wanted 4 doors so I could enjoy it with my wife and with my son. And I wasn't looking for anything exactly in particular, but when this popped up, I knew this is what I wanted. And for the time being, it fit the bill. But with the car seat in, this seat has to come up quite a ways. My wife is quite short, so she fits perfectly even with the seat up. But we've got another one on the way, and I still want to be able to take it out with them, so that's why I started searching out something with a little more room, and found the Toyota. So I've never really owned anything quite that large. I've never owned a Toyota before, so be something different. bumper controls are a little different than what I'm used to. All this way, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be posting some videos of the Toyota. I don't know if there will be anything further on this car, but I'll definitely have as much footage as I can of it up on my channel. Thanks again.